All right, so let's move on now to 4.1 part 2. Let's code the home size and the food diet points. Okay, I've already included some of this in my code, so I'll just show you where I put it. So above or right below calculate house points, I put the calculate points for home size, and then it takes in a parameter of a number for the square footage. And then above calculate footprint, I put in these items because this is really nice to have in the comments. That way I don't have to go back and forth and remember all the things in the object that is the data. That really is just referencing the form data that is being built in the or passed from the app.js. Easy to say. So you can see that I put these are then what I have in here. Let's see if I got all of them. So we're going to take in the number. And in this case, oh yes, that's good. I'm glad I saw this. So we're going to also take in, so we're actually in this case going to take in two parameters. We're going to take in the number, meaning the square footage, and we're also going to take in is apartment, okay? And then we're going to return the points in this case. Okay, so just having those comments set up kind of help us walk through it. I think I say this later, but I think I'm going to do it now. One thing I noticed after looking at the code from last time was being consistent, and in this case I was talking about if your property or your key is the same as your value, you could leave it off, which is totally true. But then I noticed actually I wasn't following the standard that I'd already set up here. So this should be footprint, okay? So household footprint is our key property, if you want to call it that, and then there is our points, okay? So now we're getting ready to, and let's just look at it real quick. So now we're going to handle size of home, okay? So this is where the user put in the square footage, or they indicated they were in apartment. So we'll handle that in the following way. First, we'll just set up, okay, we won't code it yet. Sorry, we could. So you kind of ask yourself which makes more sense to do first, and it's really based on your own, how you see it and how you like to code it. I always say code some, check it, code some, check it. So in this case, we're going to, and this is where if I had it already set up, so it would reference it. Let's see, house calculate. That's oftentimes a nice thing about having something set up. So we're going to calculate, in this case, we're going to calculate home size points, okay? And in this case, this is why having these in here is really helpful. I know what it's going to need, which is this, okay? So actually that would have been easier to grab. So if I were keeping in mind I need data, and then I need the home square foot, okay? But also what I need, and this is where we haven't seen this yet in the course, I also need is apartment, okay? So in this case, I'm passing a number and a Boolean. Okay, and then our code will have to make sure that it is doing the correct logic to handle. Ooh, I love it when I should have just done a data dot. There we go. Okay, so now I'm passing those two. So now I'm going to go write this function. Okay, so I'm going to come up here, and this is where I'll have it. So I'll say const calculate home size points, okay, is equal to a function. Okay, we know we're going to take some stuff in. I'll go ahead and set up the signature. Okay, so now what are we going to take in? And here's where, right, you can, instead of referencing the data as we've already seen before, home square footage, which is nice that I have it, and is apartment. Okay, all right, so cool. So now we have our function. What do we do inside? Well, very similar to what we did up here. As a matter of fact, our next function, we're going to see something different. Typically, it's a simple if this condition, then return this. So when reading this, I would actually think about, say if it's an apartment, I'll start there. Okay, so we'll start from in here, right? If okay, is apartment. And again, this is, you don't have to do, right, if it's true. You can if it helps you understand it. But I also want you to be able to reason about that resolves to a true or false, right? Again, it's a Boolean, right? So if it's true, it's going to run the next block. But in this case, we're not going to run a block because we only have one expression in this case. We're going to say returns, 2, right? So here, right? So if I live in an apartment, it's 2. Okay. Else if, else if, so the next one would be home square footage. One of my input, I see right here, I already messed this one up, which is good. And see, as soon as I did that, I could see by the color of this that I had actually chosen the wrong one. Home square foot, there we go. So if home square foot, in this case, is greater than 2,000, now where am I getting this, right? This is where we determine, based on our requirements, or for what we wanted to look at, is if it's over 2,000 square feet, then it would be considered a large, right? So in that case, if it's over 2,000 square feet, then I would return, 10. Else, now this is where I could start, like I've already written this code. Now if you want more experience, which you definitely do, right, you can choose how you want to do this one. Now on this one, if square foot, and in this case, is greater than or equal to 1,000, then what are we going to return? We're going to return 7. Okay. Okay, let me back that up. And now, because I still have it in memory, I could do here, the last one. So in this case, if it's greater than 0, so maybe they put in, right? In this case, let's say it wasn't an apartment, but it was less than, it was less than 1,000. Okay, so then we would return 4 points. Okay, and as we did before, as a default case, let's just set, and we're going to actually include that same comment here. So let's make sure based on the calculation, right? So if it's a small house, 4 points. So it'd be anything under 1,000 for our calculations. Medium would be anything over 1,000, 7 points, and a large would be 10. Okay, and then if it's apartment, it's 2. Cool. All right, so in this case, we're returning our number here. So down here, then we can now set up our next key value. So in this case, it'd be home size. Oh, remember, I messed this up before, so I'm going to try not to do it again. Okay, so home size points. Now you might be wondering, Rio, can we just do what we did before in the form handler where we call it from here? You can, but remember what we're going to do is end up with a total, and it's easier to have them written, declared, and assigned a variable here to do a total, to just have that be easier or doable to do, okay, or to handle. Okay, so let's just make sure I got all the comments for this one. I got all those. Cool, and I refactored that. Okay, cool. Now, so let's actually start on our next one. Okay, so now we know that calculate home size. The next one we're going to do is evaluate diet choices, right? So this was just as a reminder in here, right? So diet choices and how we pre-package food, right? How much do you have? Okay, so remember what, and this is where having these in here, so this is a string and a string for those. And so in this case, and I think this is just good to see this, and let's just go ahead and set this up. So this time I'll say calculate, it's always nice, calculate. In this case, let's say, right, I'm just going to food diet points. Okay, so we're going to take in, right? So we're setting up a function. Right? We'll talk about what we're going to take in a minute. Okay. So when we're looking at this, right? So what are we going to take in? In this case, we're going to take in diet choice, okay, or diet type. Cool. And then if we go down here and say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and set up the variable so that I have the variable as well in here. That would be nice to do, right? Set up diet type points was going to be equal to calculate diet points. We're going to pass in data dot. In this case, we're going to pass in what? We're going to pass in diet type, right? Cool, right? So we'll have another function that we'll write. I don't know. I think we'll get it to it in the next one, right? So, but we could go ahead and include it here. Diet type footprint is going to be equal to diet type points. All right, so now let's go actually write it, because the reason, and let's do this. Do I have any other comments, right? So in this case, we're going to take in, do I have it here? No, okay. So this is going to take in, these are the strings for this one, and then we're going to return a point for this, okay? Okay, so we're going to return, so we know we're going to have a return. And you could say, well, you know what, we could handle it similar to here, but instead of looking at some kind of comparison for the number, right, that would be fine. But let's learn about another way, which is called the switch statement. And there's, in some ways, they're very similar, but they're also different. Like in this case, a switch statement. So let's just look at it. So you have switch and your expression. So for us, it'd be the diet type. In case it's value 1, whatever that is, whatever we're gonna, in case this is, it's particular what we're looking for. So in this case, you can think of it that way, execute this. And then this is a breakpoint, or a break. So in this case, the switch expression is evaluated once. The result is compared with the values of each cases, right? The break is kind of nice because if no match is found, then it'll go down to the default. So that's kind of our equivalent of the return. And then the break is used to explicitly switch, to exit the switch. We're going to handle it a little differently, but we're going to say exit the switch with a return after it finds a match. So it doesn't do what we call fall through. And fall through would be it checks every one of them. And in that case, we don't want it to. So as soon as you find a match based on what we're looking for, we want you to return. So let's just sketch this out. So I'm going to say switch. Okay. In this case, switch on diet type. Open and close. So we have a block just like we have. Now again, in this case, not again, but in this case, because we're going to have several lines, we do need our block syntax. So we're going to say in case, right? And I'm going to go up here and grab it. So in case heavy meat, okay? So in case it's heavy meat, what are we going to do? We're going to say return 10. Okay, now where am I getting this is in here, right? So in that case, it's 10. So if we're looking at our syntax here, right, so this it says whatever, in case this value, right, here's our expression, in case this value, right, so it evaluates, says, is this heavy meat? Okay, so that's what that means when we hit case and colon. Now you might think this is an object because it's got the semicolon. It's not in that sense, but you know, it's good to understand the different ways we use the syntax. Yeah, I was trying to think of when we talk about colons here in the object literals. Okay, so now let's do the next one, right? So case. So in our example, we're not doing the break, we're doing a return. So we'll hit average, right? So in this case, when it's average, then what are we going to return? We're going to return 8, again, if you want to look at the wiki article here, right? Okay. So case vegetarian. And by the way, this is no judgment. I'm sure I've said this on anybody's diet. It's just good information to understand. So vegetarian has a less impact. And my favorite, okay, just because I generally eat, actually I do eat vegan. Okay, so in this case, vegan, we only return 2. Because there still is an impact to everything that we do. Now this is where we can say default, okay, return 0. So in case no matches, so that would be, again, the idea of we're past it, something that is not handled in our logic, then we return 0. And that default, case, invalid input would be another way we could think about that. So we have our return statements. We're saying in case of meat, do this. So you can kind of say which of these makes more sense to you to reason about if I just read them. And maybe it's this one because we've been doing that. Maybe it's these because it's written easier. But in general, and this was something I found really kind of interesting, is like if you're doing more complex things, they say if else is a better way to go, but a simpler, it offers a more structured alternative. The switch statement does. So it's kind of just based on like, are you doing a lot more here? I don't really see that for our examples that much of a difference. Okay. All right, let's go down here. So now that we have diet type, cool, right? I think that was, let's see. Oh yeah, so wow, that was it. That was not too bad. I almost could do the next one, but that's all right. We'll leave it for the next one. But let's do this. Let's go ahead and make sure it's all working because this is our testing step that is way important. So let's actually take this off, right? Take this breakpoint off. And actually, you know what? One other thing I'm going to take off is on the form handler. I was looking at this earlier. I'm going to comment out this because we don't need to see what those are. And so let's say you can choose, of course, whichever one you want. Okay, so when I hit calculate, then what I would see here, right, is I see the return, and that's hard-coded. But for the diet choice, it's 4. And does that line up with our logic, right? So if it's, down here, vegetarian, it returns 4. Very cool, okay? So we know it's working, and we can see up here, it actually, from the form, it came in correctly. So that's awesome. Okay, so don't forget to do your Git workflow for these two, and then we'll have one more to finish up 4.1.